Greg, you were telling me about this time you were working with a client.
Yep.
And you let them convince you to make changes you knew were not good changes.
Yes.
And it didn't end well. So
yes.
I wanted to ask you kind of about when you should put your foot down.
Yeah.
When you're working with clients, when you should
Yep.
put your foot down and say, no,
Yep.
we are not making these changes. We are not making these changes. And like how to handle that.
Yeah, so I think what I've learned over, I don't know how many clients I've worked with at this point, but it's very similar to even personal training, right?
Uh-huh.
Clients are, they become influenced by things they're seeing and hearing, or maybe a conviction that they suddenly have. And when in the past, what would happen is, I'm thinking of this one particular client,
Yeah.
where I'm like, man, they really had huge momentum, and because I allowed them to convince me that they should do a different thing, they completely have gone the wrong direction,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I think the correct time is immediately. when I look back at, because you make mistakes even when it's indirect, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't actually my advice to do what they were doing, but I did it to satisfy the client. There's a slight danger in that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can actually not get the client the results that they actually are desiring by allowing them to dictate what's happening, right? And kind of the situation was, we were talking, we had the way I structured everything. Actually, now I think about this, it happened twice. The way we structured everything was a way that they personally just felt out of their comfort zone and
Okay.
out of control.
Okay.
And because of that, they made decisions based on that versus the result.
Okay. Was this the business owner, like the founder,
Yes.
the founder owner,
Both,
and everything?
both times.
Both times.
Yep.
Okay. Because I think that's relevant sometimes
Yep.
because they're used to having control over
Yep.
everything, and as a business scales, this happens in more areas than just advertising and media buying. But they need to start letting go of
Yep.
control and delegating and dictating.
Yep.
And this is probably, an instance of that as
Yes.
well, right?
Well, and they were both solopreneurs,
Okay.
right? And
So they didn't even have a team
nope.
yet.
They didn't have
Did
a
they have
team
any
yet.
other contractors other than you?
maybe, but I
Okay.
don't think so.
Okay.
If they did, it was two or three.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I learned though is, because in my mind I can remember exactly what I would do differently, which is I would have said, you should follow this system regardless of how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at the numbers, right?
Right.
And we were talking about how a lot of times we're making decisions off of emotion.
Uh-huh.
And that's usually the times where you make the worst decisions, right?
Yeah.
Because your fear is taken into account, or stress, and then you just start making these decisions that they don't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Right. And the situation was, the way that I had the campaign structured, I had a whole bunch of ad sets,
Okay.
a whole bunch of different targeting,
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch, just a lot of stuff. So visually, when they looked at it, they couldn't fully understand it.
Right.
And so because of that, they felt like, oh, I don't like how this looks.
Okay.
Versus how much am I spending, how much am I making, right?
And was this recent or years ago or whatever?
This was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been 2 years.
Because I know we've talked recently about a simpler campaign structure, but a few years ago,
Yes.
that's what was working.
That's
was
what-
having a lot of different campaigns and a lot of different targeting of pockets.
Exactly. This is before iOS. So
Right.
before the
And so
iOS changes, where you can, really.
You could really get targeted
Yep.
and really get that data, whereas now that's not really available. So
Well-
broader campaigns, especially in Facebook, broader
Yes.
tend to work better.
Well, and here's the other thing. So this also applies to now. So people who are stuck and living in the old days
Uh-huh.
of how things used to be, which is the big mistake you can make if you're running a business, is to fall in love with how things used to be and not adapt to what it is now, right? You get, with the whole iOS changes, now people can't see the tracking as well. And so that sometimes drives them to want to test. There's got to be some secret targeting out there
Uh-huh.
of being able to track this. And that's just not the case. And so this iOS change has actually helped me get better at leading the client and telling them, no, this is what we need to do. regardless of how we feel.
Okay.
Right? And I use those numbers that we were talking about because there are actual like benchmarks that I'm measuring everything.
Okay.
But in the past, I have never really like educated the customer
Okay.
on these numbers. And,
All right.
and it wasn't until last week when we had a conversation where Blake actually he structured a sentence that I think kind of like changed my whole mindset because what's obvious to him was a blind spot for me. And he talked about business intelligence. And since I've used what he basically taught me last week, it has already helped my clients tremendously in feeling like we're on the right track.
Okay.
And there's
Nice.
like a strategy. Because this whole time I've been operating off this strategy, but never communicating
Okay.
what that is. Because normally when I would bring it up, they would just kind of have a blank, like, yeah, what does that mean exactly?
Okay.
And I would go through, so maybe I assumed, which is the wrong idea, I assumed that maybe they're not interested in knowing any of this information, but it's actually incorrect. They are interested. It's my job to break it down for them to understand it in like the simplest terms.
Okay. So what are some of your tips and tricks to breaking down complex, digital advertising and marketing numbers
Sure.
into what they actually want to know?
Yep.
Because a lot of times they don't know what they want to know, right?
Correct.
Because they're an expert in their area,
Yep.
whether it's e-commerce or something. They
Yep.
built it up to a point and they're an expert in that area, but sometimes they don't know what to ask. So what's your tips on breaking down these complicated things to get them the answers they want so they can move on and feel good about where they're at?
Yeah, so number one, I basically measure it against like other people's accounts
Okay.
and other numbers from my like history, right? So for example, knowing like I don't want to exceed 30% on marketing costs to revenue generation, right? And basically using that as like that is the top baseline of what we're going to use, and anything below that is good,
Okay.
right? And then the next thing I explain is click-through rates, and then offers. So with the click-through rates, I basically tell them what a click-through rate means
Okay.
and what we're trying to achieve. So in the simplest term, I just say the click-through rate basically is telling you if we're either talking to the right person or we're saying the wrong thing,
Okay.
right? So if we're at 1% or higher, that means we're talking to the right person, we're saying the right thing. If we're below that, we need to change that.
Okay.
That's the problem. Then the next number I explain is if let's say we have a 2% click-through rate, I educate them on the mistake everyone makes is they have a high click-through rate on the ad, and then people get to their page and no one buys. They think it's the ad, but it's not.
No.
See, but most people don't
Yeah.
know that. So before I wouldn't even explain that. I would just say, well, we have to like fix the offer, and I would receive resistance
Uh-huh.
from the business owner. Like, no, there's got to be the ad is not doing.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's not really the case. So this is the analogy I use with all of them.
Okay.
I say, this is how it works. Let's pretend we're in a physical space and we're at the mall, and you have a store at the mall, which is your Shopify store, and it's a very big mall, and you're trying to get your target customer into the store. Well, if I go outside and I have like the best sign ever, and I get them excited, and a whole bunch of people are coming to my billboard, my sign that I'm spinning, and they go, hey, where's this store where I can buy these unbelievable hoodies? It's right in here. And I send them in there. And then the hoodies are $10,000 and none of them can afford it. Or they go in there and we only have size large and everyone who went in is a size small.
Uh-huh.
Or they go in and we don't even have what we told them we had.
Uh-huh.
What's the problem? Is it the advertisement? Or is it what's inside the store?
Right.
And they all understand that. They go,
Right.
that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So I say when we have a high click-through rate on our ad, that means we did our job getting them there,
Yeah.
getting them excited. Now, we did not do our job once they got there.
Right.
And so that analogy right there seems to like simplify all the stuff that you can look in Facebook and Google and TikTok and all the ads and get confused with.
Yeah.
To me, that's what simplifies it.
Well, that makes a ton of sense. I think the only time that's not the case is if you're trying to intentionally deceive people with your ads. And frankly, I just won't work with anybody that's trying to do that, right?
Well,
but
that's
there
true.
are people out there that do that. So, so if they're getting there and they're landing on the page and they're not buying, then there's something wrong with the offer or something broken on the page. That's the other thing to think about. And I think a lot of clients resist hearing that unless you explain it and break it down in a good way, because they're interpreting that as there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
Especially in a solopreneur kind
Yes.
of business situation, because this is something they created.
Yep.
And when you say, well, there's something wrong with the offer, they hear, I'm the screwed up one. Because
Yep.
everybody kind of deals with imposter syndrome,
Yep.
especially
Oh,
at this stage in the business. And so breaking it down like that, I think helps them understand that you're not blaming them. You're
Yep.
just saying, here's the situation. So we need to pivot on the offer a little bit.
Yep.
And that's fine, because you created these offers. You can also pivot on the offer.
Yep.
And you're super flexible. You don't have to like go to a board of directors and try to get
Exactly.
approval for an offer change. If you're getting people into your mall store with your
Yep.
flippy sign and everything, and people aren't buying, you can just ask them, well, what did you expect? This and this and this. Come back next week,
Yep.
and we'll have
We'll
those
have it.
things. We'll make that happen.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't think about how easy that can actually be.
Yep.
If you just, they expect this, let's just give them that
Yep,
on the
exactly.
page. We don't even need to change the ads. Let's just change the page to give them exactly what they want, and now we're profitable.
You just made a point that I would have forgot to make if
Okay.
you didn't say that. Okay, so I may or may not mention this maybe before, but I know I've told someone in person this. So one of my clients was getting 0 sales
Okay.
on their fitness product they were selling before we started, right? So
Okay.
then we ran some tests, and for 2 weeks we ran we kept his ads the same, and all we did was change the landing page and the offer, and now he's getting sales all the time.
Okay.
But we never changed the ads.
Never change the ads.
The ads never changed. The target never changed. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
Just what happened at the actual page. What's interesting is if you look at the ads, the click-through rates and everything have been the exact same. There has been no changes, which would tell you that means the theory of they clicked on the ad, but when they were getting to the page initially, the offer was not good.
Yeah. Right.
Right? But
Yep.
you change the offer, and now the same ad that you did nothing to converts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that's the point, is to be flexible with what you're actually offering to test why aren't people buying. We don't have the advantage of like in person, you can literally just ask the people
Right.
what it is. Online you can't, right? They don't reveal that to you. So you have to test things to see what it is. One of my favorite techniques to use for like, especially newer stores that are struggling with getting conversions, a lot of times, because like the point you made, the business owner believes they are the actual products.
Right.
They are the sweatshirts and the hats and the shoes, right? Which is incorrect, but I understand why they feel that way.
Right.
And I don't think it's wrong. I just think sometimes it can get in the way. So one of my favorite techniques is when a company is struggling to get the conversions, what I typically like to do to see if it's people don't like the product or if it's just like the price is I do a heavy discount for a short duration of time. And if we all of a sudden start seeing sales, then we know we're not communicating the value to justify the price.
Right. Yeah.
And that's my favorite way to figure out, are we demonstrating enough value, or do people think you are as, I guess, elite as you're saying you are?
Right.
Because if they all of a sudden are buying the product,
Yeah.
that means they like the product.
Right.
It's they don't think the price is value to what you're giving
Yeah.
it to.
Yeah. I think that's a great strategy.
I usually have to twist the business owner's arm to do that.
Well, a lot of them don't want to. A lot of them don't want to discount, and I fully understand. I don't want to discount this. I should be able to sell it. I put my heart and soul into this. Discounting cheapens the brand. Blah 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 blah. I heard Tony Robbins say I should be increasing my prices instead of decreasing my prices.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But here's the thing: you've got to go through a troubleshooting phase.
Yep.
A temporary discount to try to identify a problem is not going to cheapen the brand.
Yep.
It could be a flash sale that you do for 2 weeks, And even though Tony Robbins tells you don't discount things because you'll cheapen your brand, the number of times I've seen a $7 offer from Tony Robbins is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So that guy discounts his stuff all the time.
All the ones that say never discount
they
are like
do
the
it.
biggest perpetrators.
They do it all the time. So you got to look at what they're doing, not necessarily what they're saying, because many times what they're saying is just marketing language to try to get you to buy whatever they're doing. So, and then the other side of it is you need to have an understanding. You need to explain this to your clients that people buy based on perceived value, not actual value. And the reason is because everybody's actual value is a little bit different. And we don't know what the actual value is until we actually start using the thing or whatever. But when we're making a purchase decision, it's on perceived value. Now, that doesn't mean we should give everybody this perceived value that's way overinflated and then try to sell that. That's manipulation. But if you're not explaining that value so that they, in their own head, are thinking, this is a great deal. Even, it doesn't matter if your product is $500 or $5. The perceived value is why people are buying. And so sometime if you discount and you're getting sales, then you got to think, okay, we need to put some more explanation on the sales page or somewhere to explain the actual, the value so that they can start adjusting their perceived value. And some great ways to do that are testimonials. It's a really good way to do that. Case studies to show results based on what your product is or whatever. If it's something like a t-shirt or whatever, because we talk about those a lot, just some high quality lifestyle shots can go a long way to increase the perceived value. There's lots of different ways to do it, but you need to have that understanding, right?
Well, and that's so if you're someone struggling with, like, you're just starting and you're just not getting sales, be open-minded to test that. Normally, when I said earlier you got to twist their arm, it's because there is a fear, there's an assumption that everyone is watching, but it's false. Right? There's an assumption like, I'm going on the news to announce to the entire world that I'm discounting my store at 50%. And now, the whole world knows that I just cheapen my brand. But really, that's an overinflation of how much people are actually even watching. Right. So they're not going to remember you ran a sale to troubleshoot your brand, 2 years ago.
No, absolutely not.
So don't
they won't
be
even
afraid
remember in 2 weeks.
They might not even remember tomorrow.
There's so much going on.
So I think use that as an opportunity to figure out why. And I've done this multiple times with clients, and then they start to figure out, okay, because the fear usually is if there's no conversions, it's no one likes my product.
That's the fear. And as someone who's created their own products, I've felt that deeply. And
it's normal.
It is normal. I literally have been to therapy to help me with this problem. I think it's a very natural and normal thing, but it's something you kind of hit head on and worked through and worked towards. And there's an entire industry of occupational therapists that help people deal with feeling that in their careers in one way or another. And it's totally normal.
It's valid.
It's a valid feeling.
And so I think usually this is what I see. When a company's struggling to get conversions and people aren't buying it, they start that fear. It's triggering it more and more. So they're like, "Oh no one likes my product. What happens? No one buys." And you go through this negative mental cycle, right? But then when you run something like this, and then they see, "Wow, I got a lot of sales when I did this discount." It's almost like it rejuvenates them, because then it proves to them, oh, people do like this. Right. It's now I just need to figure out how can I sell it at a higher price point. And so this is also a good way to build your confidence back up. If you're struggling with, like, man, I spent all this time doing this and no one's buying it, this is a great way to do it. And don't be afraid. Here's the other counterintuitive thing. So one of my clients, we're running a retargeting campaign, which he's going to make total sense, but to him, he felt like, why would we do that? So I think we're only knocking off like 15% or whatever. They go on the page, then they get retargeted, and they take 15% off, right? the funny thing, because once again, this is the tug of war with the client of like, just give it a shot, is they're like, well, if I do that, I'll be making less money. And once again, that's an emotional statement, because do you have something in front of you, data that has proven that already?
Yeah.
Or have you tried it yet?
Yeah.
Well, we're running it, and he's getting a 6x return on his retargeting, right? And I said, so interesting. We're lowering the cost.
Wait. What's his return on the cold traffic without the discount?
1.75.
1.75.
So this is
then
doing
you
good.
follow up with people that don't buy, give them a 15% discount, and you're getting a 6x return.
Yep.
Even after accounting for the discount.
Yep. So
I'll do that all day long.
So to me, so this is where, we talk about business intelligence. I have almost to ingrain in the head is look at how much we spent, how much was made.
Yeah.
Look how much was spent. It's almost like as long as I keep that reminder, because the temptation is to act off emotion.
Right.
And to say, I don't know if I feel like this is working, which is not the same as it is working.
Right. I don't feel, but again, like the perceived value conversation from a customer standpoint, as an agency owner to a client standpoint, they're making decisions based on that perceived value or emotion. That I don't feel like this is a good idea.
Yep.
Well, on paper, you're getting a 6x return.
Yeah.
You like.
Let's not worry about our feelings.
How many times? If you just think about it, if I give this magical little machine over here $1 and then they give me 6 back, I will keep doing that.
Yep.
I will keep doing that. I would do it with 1.7, but I would rather do it with 6.
Yep.
6x. And so when people start wrapping their heads around that, it's much easier. And this makes me kind of take a big step back and think the difference between really great media buyers and agency owners that work with clients and those that are not really great, that tend to struggle, is this ability to level up their own clients from an educational standpoint, to take the time to explain these concepts in a way that makes sense for them, so they stay on board longer. They understand the value that they're getting. They understand and start to trust you more. But they've got to have that understanding.
Well, and I think you're 100% right, which is even as I've been doing this a long time, right? But there's always areas to improve, and that's an area of focus of mine, is to inject this philosophy of how if you think about it long term and you're structuring it off of these types of metrics, you'll get much better results than trying to do a hack or trying to just skip steps or not actually build a real machine. And because of that, I think by educating them on this has been very helpful.
Yeah.
The business intelligence side, because with that, they're able to, it seems to drive down their anxiety.
Yeah.
Like they just feel, and once again, what is anxiety? An emotion. A feeling. It's not what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the key. If anything, I would say make sure to check your emotions as you're growing your business, because you can make big mistakes in your business based off of feeling the wrong emotions for that day. And what I find, there's a trend that I notice when clients want to make changes. And it's normally they didn't sleep good. Maybe they got in an argument with their significant other.
Okay.
Their children are driving them crazy. And because of that, they want to make a change on their account.
They want to feel some control in their life.
Bingo.
I mean, really, I'm the champion of
the champion.
the champion of external factors wanting me to have some control in my business.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a normal emotion.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sit here and say you should be a robot.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you just take an extra step and think, okay, I feel very emotional right now because of whatever. Let me take a rest for a minute and just kind of decompress and then come back to this, because I feel like it's kind of like, you're married. If you're upset because of something at work,
Uh-huh.
and then you go home and your wife says something to you, your likelihood of getting more upset over something that means nothing is just higher, and it has nothing to do with your wife
Nothing
or
to do
your
with anything.
relationship.
It's just because we're in an emotional state, right? And one trick I have for this particular thing, and maybe this is something that can help some clients or whatever, is to say, okay, I want to make this change. Decision made, which
Yep.
already makes me feel better because I made a decision. But then I say, I know I'm a little bit emotional or I'm tired or whatever, so I'm not going to actually implement it for 48 hours.
Yep.
And then in 48 hours, most of the time I'm like, well, that sounds like a dumb idea. So I don't
That's
do
a
it.
good- well, that's
but
a
I
good tactic.
sit on it for a minute
Yep.
and give it a minute. But if I do feel good about it by then, I'll go ahead and make that change
Yep.
and see. But I've at least kind of felt like I did something by making the decision, but then waiting for 48 hours
Yep.
before I actually implement it.
It's just a good way to do it, and it's something that I'm even trying to improve. How can I provide more value to my customers? That could be, as I'm doing more of this marketing, consulting, and running ads, you also learn that some of the value that I believe initially I thought was not that valuable to the customer
Uh-huh.
is actually the big value of why people want to stay on. Like, remember when we first got started, you referred to me as your marketing therapist, right?
It was true.
And it's more of not, can Greg click the buttons and get this in front of people, right? The value that you were really getting was, how do I not have so much anxiety that I'm going to
Yeah.
go crazy?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a big value to the customer, is to be able to say,
Yeah.
we got this.
Yeah.
Everything's
well, and
gonna
it was
be
really
fine.
nice for me to basically to hand off that
Yep.
responsibility to you,
Yep.
so I could say, okay, Greg's got this, and
Yep.
he's going to let me know how things are
Yep.
going. So I could focus on delivery or creating new products or whatever. And for you, it's less stress because you didn't make the product, and
Well,
so you're
exactly.
not as emotionally
I'm
invested
detached.
in the product.
I'm detached.
You're detached, and so you can make better, more informed decisions.
Yep.
And it's a great way to delegate and handle and
It's
manage
almost,
those things.
you know what's funny? It's almost, now that you say that, the perfect, if you have this question in your mind, should I hire an agency or a person to run my ads? It's not actually, can they do the job?
Yeah.
It's more about yourself. Do I have a tendency to feel anxious and concerned about the ads when I run them?
Yeah.
If you do, you need to hire someone. And I'm being dead serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you are someone that tends to stress out about like, this isn't, I gotta, and you just feel really emotional about it, you're the perfect candidate to actually hire someone else out, because you're the one that needs it the most. Because if you can't just make decisions, like if you can't do this, last night you were with your family, you slept no hours, everything went wrong at home, and then you come into work and you look at your numbers and you can't separate the numbers from the business and home life, you really need to hire this off, because that just shows like everyone that if you run into that risk, you have to understand what your weaknesses are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You just have to, we all have them.
And that's taking a way big step back and just talking about business growth in general.
Yep.
That's something you're going to have to step through if you want to scale.
Yep.
Right. And it happens so much with solo entrepreneur kind of situation, which, I was in multiple times.
Yep.
You have to be able to let go of some of that control and delegate and train. And one of my favorite books on this, it's an old book. It's called The E-Myth. Have you ever read that? The E-Myth.
That's actually one of the first books I ever read.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. It's more about, you'd have to translate it over into like a digital kind of context, but still really helpful. But you have to wade through that. And if you don't wade through that, your business will always stay capped at a certain level. Now, some people are totally fine with that. Maybe it's like a second income type situation, and that is completely fine.
Yep.
But if you're at a position where you're thinking, I'm doing everything and I can't seem to get this over the top, you have to find a way to let go of some of that control and delegate pieces of your business. And one area is with, a media buyer, marketing agency, or whatever. And I don't want to talk about this right now. We should definitely do one on this, but how to find a good media buyer or agency or something, because those are murky waters.
Yeah.
That is not an easy thing to do. And I've worked with agencies that have a flashy website, have all the right words and language, and then when you start working with them, they don't really know.
They don't know anything.
and I've worked with others that their presence is small or whatever online, but they know their stuff.
Yep.
And so maybe that's something we can cover in another episode.
We should definitely talk about that, because they're, without, saying any names or whatever, there's a couple of people that I'm working with right now that match that.
Yeah.
Where on this front end level, the public believes that they are running all these ads and all that, but then I'm in the background, and so they're hiring me like, hey, we don't actually know.
We don't know
I've actually been told this. We don't know how to market.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking,
And they're a marketing
you're a marketing agency, and I couldn't believe hearing that, right? But it just makes you question all types of things out there. Who else is telling me they know how to do stuff that they have no clue on? But yeah, I mean, and it's out there. And this isn't about shaming or making people feel bad. This is just about knowing how to vet and do all that. And so we should talk about that, because
we should.
There's definitely some way just to protect yourself and to make sure you get the maximum value.
Absolutely. In the same area, I feel like website development, because I approach all of this from, that was where I spent the first 10 years was in website development surrounding marketing technology. But the same thing is when someone wants to hire a website developer, the same problem happens. I worked with one company. By the time the project was done, the client had spent over $500,000 on this website.
$500,000.
It was a very, very large project. $500,000 on this website. And 6 months later, the whole project was scrapped because it was full of security holes, and this was in an industry where you just couldn't have a security problem. And the amount of effort it would be for me and my team at the time to fix all of that wouldn't have been worth it. And then later
they wouldn't want to write a check big enough to fill that.
I found out later that agency had literally just found someone on Upwork to do all their development, because they didn't have any in-house developers. They had graphic designers and other things like that, but they didn't have a developer, so they just hired someone on Upwork that said they had the skills. And that one person, who they probably only paid maybe $50,000 to, that one person did all of the stuff, and then they charged $500,000.
And that just shows you too, to never, from a consumer standpoint, don't underestimate the expertise of certain, meaning don't arrogantly believe that other industries are not as valuable as others, because what that typically means is, oh, well, anyone can do a developer. Anyone can make an ad. Anyone can do email marketing, right? You're making these assumptions like it's not that hard. It can't be that hard.
Right.
And that's, if you have that kind of mentality, you're most likely going to fall prey to that and end up hiring people that aren't actually good at what they say they're good at. Or make a huge mess of things that don't need to be made of mess. But anyways, we don't want to get too crazy. We'll do a whole nother episode.
We'll do something on that. I just was thinking of that just now. So we'll make that happen. But let's wrap this up. If you were to kind of summarize this whole conversation, Greg, on how you've learned to better handle those anxieties, communicate with your clients better, wrap it up. Give us a good summary for that.
I think the biggest thing is this. I need to directly tell them, number wise, this is what we're going to do, and take the leadership of that and say, we are doing this, and being okay with, if it fails, it's on me. and not kind of shying away from that. And I think with that kind of mentality and simplifying what really matters from don't even think about everything else, a couple of numbers that they just need to know. How much we spending, how much are we making, what's the actual return, what's the click-through rates,
and then what's next?
And
right?
then
and how do
what
I
we're gonna
compare?
do.
How do I compare to others? Because everybody worries about that.
Yeah.
How do I compare to others?
How's my progress?
Is this good? Is this good?
That's actually what I'm getting better at, is telling people this you're either succeeding or we're not where we need to be yet.
So we're going to make some adjustments.
So this is what we're going to do.
But if we're succeeding, we don't necessarily need to make those adjustments.
We make
right?
no adjustments. My job is to make sure you don't do anything.
Yeah. maybe
Don't
test
screw it up.
maybe test scaling up if that model supports that, right? If the business model supports that. So, all right, cool. I like that. Greg, how can people reach out to you?
GregMarshall.co, and you can book a free strategy session.
BlakeBuse.com. I have the SM3 group in there. It's a group kind of coaching, consulting surrounding social media marketing. So you can check that out.
Well, until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Okay, catch you later. Bye.